What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. A big thank you for coming back and choosing another one of my videos right here on YouTube. Recently I put out a video showing you some helpful tips on how you can start your youth development in Football Manager 2023. We took two players and put them on a 4-season journey to try and get the best out of them to see how they develop in FM23. We started them off in the under-18s, got them all the way into the first team in just 4 seasons and compared how the development worked across two different players. Well, in the comments section of that video, somebody put to me, what would happen if we compared developing players in-house at the club against developing players using the loan system? It was a really interesting comment and got me thinking. It got me thinking so much that that's what today's video is going to be all about. Yes, we are going to have a bit of a sliding doors moment in this video. We're going to start off a brand new game with Fulham. I'll show you why we picked Fulham once we get into it. We're going to take one player from their youth academy and we're going to have the sliding doors moment where in one side of the save, he's going to be kept at Fulham. We're going to have him in the under-21s and moving gradually into the first team. And on the other side of the sliding doors moment, he's going to be loaned out for 4 seasons straight, slowly but surely increasing the level of football that he plays to see which of the two methods would actually work out best in terms of youth development. I really think this is going to be an interesting one. So if you've got yourself comfortable and you're ready to go, we're going to jump on in. We're going to show you Fulham and the player that we've picked, and then we're going to go off on those two separate paths to see which one brings the best out in our youth team player. Here we go then, we have fired up a brand new save in FM23, taken over as manager of Fulham and navigated our way to the club information page. Now in the little intro at the start of the video I said I would explain why I was picking Fulham, and it basically is all to do with what's going on in the top left hand corner. Looking at their facilities, you can see they have excellent training facilities, excellent academy coaching, good youth recruitment and good youth facilities. Now it would have been easy for this kind of experiment to go to a Manchester United, Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, where they've got these state-of-the-art facilities. They can train those youth players in those facilities and move them to the state-of-the-art first team facilities, but I'm not too sure that that is a fair representation of what football actually is. And if we look at Fulham, we know across the past couple of years they have a pedigree of bringing those kinds of players through and needing to do it to keep the club sustainable, so they have a track record of youth development. I mean, they've had Fabio Carvalho and Harvey Elliott pass through their youth ranks and have obviously moved them on to Liverpool, and I think it's fairer to go through a club that does that rather than just go to one of the big boys and go, oh okay, this is their state-of-the-art everything. At least here we know that the player is going to have good youth facilities when they come through the under-18s and under-21s. When they move into the first team, they're going to go into excellent training facilities for the first team. I think that is a fairer representation than just going to one of the big boys. So that's the reason why we have picked the club. The next thing you're going to need to know is who the player is. If we go to the Dev Centre in the under-18 squad, they have a player called Charlie Robinson. Now, Charlie Robinson is a 17-year-old at the start of the game, plays one position as a centre-back, and because I'm using OPZ Elite's skin, I can see that he has a current ability of 65. Now, you might not be able to see that in your skin. If you want to download OPZ Elite, I will leave a link in the description down below. But as I said, he starts off as a 17-year-old. He has current ability of 1 star and a 3-star potential against Fulham's first team. He has a value of 170,000 to 600,000. He's 6'3" and weighs 12 stone 3 pounds. Now, looking at him, he's just a raw player at the start of the game. Obviously, 17-year-old isn't going to be the finished article, and that's the reason why we need help with youth development. But he does have some good core stats to start him off. Tackling of 14, determination 19, which is good for youth development. Positioning of 16, jumping reach of 16, natural fitness of 13, stamina and acceleration are 10. So as I said, he does have a good block of stats to work upon, and at 65 current ability now, he has a good base for us to work on in terms of youth development. So the next step then is to split the save in two. As I said, this is where the sliding doors moment happens. In one life, he's going to stay at the club. He's going to have 4 years of development at Fulham, and in another life, he's going to have 4 years of going out on loan as we try and increase the first team football that he gets to aid his development. Which of the two methods is going to work best? We're going to find out. Let's jump to the end of the first season and show you what's happened both at home and on loan. Here we go then, we have pushed forwards to the end of the first season, and the first version of the player you're looking at is the player who has stayed at home. Yes, this Charlie Robinson has played under 21s football at Fulham for the first season. Looking at him, you can see in the top right corner, his current ability has jumped up to 85, so 20 points of progression there, and progression on the stats come in the form of finishing, heading, marking and tackling for the technicals, composure, concentration, decisions, flair, leadership, vision and work rate in the mentals, and then in the physicals, natural fitness and stamina. He is now an 18-year-old who is valued at £300,000 to £950,000, and he has had some good progression in terms of his current ability and potential ability against Fulham's first team. For the purposes of the video, I just want to show you the training regime he's on. He's just been trained as a central defender with no additional focus, no intensity level, and starting developing the weaker foot. So he's just on a normal training. I am not in control of any of his training. Luis Boamorte is the assistant manager, and he's taking the training sessions in my absence, which is aiding with the development. Looking at his first season then, if we go to the career stats, you can see he has played 26 non-competitive games, scoring 4 goals with 1 penalty, 2 assists, 1 player of the match award, 8 yellows. He did get a red card, and an average rating of 6.95. Now, I don't know if you can see all of that where my circle is, but it's all in the bottom half of the screen because obviously under 21s football doesn't get saved as his Premier League record. But you can see he's been exposed to under 21s football, and that is the outcome. He has took 20 points in terms of his current ability as a step forwards, and that's interesting to see how the under 21s has developed him as a player. Now the question is, what happened to the player who went out on loan? Will that improve, or will it just be around the same? Will the development line kind of just flatten out, and will we see the same kind of development for home and away? Let's jump to the loan player and show you exactly what happened at the end of the first season away from the club. This then is the loan version of Charlie Robinson. He was sent out on loan to Boreham Wood in the Vanarama National League, which meant that he was being exposed to first team football at the age of 17. And you can see that it's this version of the player that is slightly ahead at this point. So he has gone from 65 to 103 in terms of his current ability just by playing in the Vanarama National League. Looking at his stats, in terms of the technicals, progression is in crossing, dribbling and marking, in the mentals, concentration, decisions, leadership and vision. He also has progression in the balance and the pace for the physicals. So he's developing quite nicely. Now, I'm not too sure why there is such a big difference, but the version that stayed at home was only valued in the hundreds of thousands. This version is valued at 9.2 to 11.5 million pounds, and he has done even better when being marked up against the current ability and potential ability of him against Fulham's first team. Looking at his first season, his career stats, he went on loan to Boreham Wood, where he played a total of 50 games across the entire season, but 42 in the Vanarama National, yielding a 6.6 average rating. Across the entire season, he played 50 times in adult football, and he got an average rating of 6.63, which is underneath me, and you probably can't see it. So it's been a positive first season for both players, one jumping up by 20 points and the other one jumping to 103. The loan version is ahead at this point, but what will happen next? Let's jump to the end of season 2 and find out how both players develop. So moving on to the end of the second season, we are going to start off with the stay-at-home Charlie Robinson. And you can see there are small signs of progress, having played another season of under-21s football. He also played in the Papa John's Trophy. His current ability has gone from 85 to 91, so he's up 6 points there. But the stats really aren't developing as I thought they would. In terms of progression, he has jumping reach and strength showing signs of progression, but nothing else really in the stats. He's 19 years old now, valued at 600,000 to 1.5 million, and he is improving against Fulham's current first team. Looking at his purple bar at the bottom there, it says exciting young prospect, so the club obviously think he still is going to develop further. Let's show you what happened in his second season of under-21s football. So the 23-24 season, he played 29 games with 9 goals, 1 assist, 1 penalty, 4 player of the match awards, 11 yellow cards. He did get a 7.29 average rating across those games. So there is progression in terms of his average rating. However, he needs to be progressing on the pitch. His stats aren't developing in this part of the save as we thought they would. So what is happening to the loan player? Is another season of loan football going to improve that player even more? Let's swap and show you what happened at the end of the second season for the loan player. So this is the version of Charlie Robinson that has been out on loan. He has spent a season at Charlton playing first team football in the Football League. You can see that his current ability has jumped up to 114. His stats only show progression in terms of strength and concentration, but looking at the stats as a whole, he seemed to be a far better rounded player than the version stayed at home at Fulham. Looking at his valuation, 11.5 million to 14 million, and he is a promising centre back. Looking at his current ability against Fulham's first team, that is now starting to develop nicely. In terms of his little bar at the bottom, it says exciting young prospect who isn't far away from first team football. If we go to his history and look at his season that was, he played for Charlton in Sky Bet League 1, played 43 times, scoring 1 goal and an average rating of 6.72. Across the season, he played 50 games and got an average rating of 6.73. So again, the exposure to first team football seems to be aiding that development and making it a little bit bigger in terms of the jumps. Also, it's aiding him in terms of his reputation, because that means that he's valued at a far bigger price, which means that if Fulham wanted to sell him on now, they would get 11.5 to 14 million from this version, whereas the stay at home one, they would only be getting the upper end of 1.5 million pounds. So it's interesting at this point that the loan player is still ahead, but how much more development can we get out of the players? Can we get much more out of the one that stays at home, and how much more is there to get out of the one out on loan? Let's jump to the end of season 3 and show you both versions to see what happens in season 3. So we jump to the end of season 3, and Charlie Robinson that has stayed at home is now a 96 current ability player. His progression really isn't going the way that I thought it would. When we look at his stats, there is a lot of down arrows. He has had first team football and he's been playing at a higher level than he ever has before. You can see in terms of the season stats there, he's played in the Europa League, he played in the Premier League, he played in the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup and the Papa John's Trophy. Club do value him as an exciting young prospect, but at the age of 20 now, he's valued at 1.7 to 3.6 million pounds. If we break down his history and his career stats to show you that season then, so he made 3 non-competitive games, he started 9 Premier League games with 3 more as a substitute, he had 4 cup games, he had 3 continental games in the Europa League, and he played 16 overall with a 6.62 average rating and a 6.7 average rating in the Premier League. So I thought exposure to the first team might have actually started to aid his development a little bit quicker, but in fairness, it doesn't really seem to be making that much of a difference. Maybe he was held back a little bit and we should have moved him up to the first team last season, but if his development doesn't come any quicker, he isn't even going to pass what the loan player has done after 2 seasons out on loan. So let's look at the loan player and see how he has now developed and how far he's going to go in terms of his development. So at the end of the 3rd season for the loan version of Charlie Robinson, you can see that he spent the season at Derby County. He played in Sky Bet League 1 once again, and that has moved his current ability now to 116. So he started off at 65, he has moved to 116. In terms of the stats, once again, his stats now are developing in the areas that he needs them. So for a centre-back, he has tackling of 15, he has jumping reach of 17, heading could be improved, but the 2 that show up the most improvement in the end of season 3 are agility and vision. He's now a 20-year-old valued at 11.5 to 13 million pounds, and it seems like the loans are doing him some good. Looking at his season then, he played 44 times in Sky Bet League 1 with 1 goal and an average rating of 6.68, so not setting the world alight, but still that exposure to first team football is certainly helping his development. Looking at overall across the season, 47 games played, 2 goals scored and a 6.68 average rating means that he is still playing fairly consistently in that division. But it's what is ultimately kicking on his current ability. Being exposed to adult first team football has meant that he has gone from that 65 base player to 116 within 3 seasons, whereas the first team player now at Fulham isn't maybe progressing as quickly because he didn't have that initial jump at the start of the save. So with one season left to go, who is going to finish up on top? Can that first team player now at Fulham overtake the one who is going back out on loan for another season outside of the club? This then is how the player at home will finish up at the end of season 4. His current ability has jumped up to 111, and we've exposed him to a level of football that he has never had before through the first team. Looking at the stats, he has had quite a big jump in his progression in season 4 with anticipation, bravery, composure, concentration, leadership, all showing signs of progression in the mentals. In the physicals, his stamina and strength have progressed. He's still only valued at £275 to £550,000 by the club. His current ability is now 2 stars. His potential ability is 3 stars against Fulham's first team. And if we go and look at what experience he got across the season, he has now played in the Premier League 37 times. He scored 2 goals with 2 assists and a 6.57 average rating. Overall, across the season, played in 54 games with 2 goals, 2 assists, 14 yellows. He had a 6.6 average rating across the season, which is okay for a player who is still developing. Looking at him on the whole then, this season he played Champions League football, Super Cup, Premier League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, as Fulham had won the Europa League the season before. Much higher level of football for him as a player, which means that aided in that big jump up from 96 to 111 in his current ability, and it means that he's finishing a lot closer to what the loan player was in season 3. The only question now is, what development has the loan player got? Has he pushed on even further and widened the gap once more? Let's switch players and show you the loan player. So this is the loan version of Charlie Robinson for the 4th season, and you can see that he has spent the season out on loan at Reading in the Championship. Now, looking at him, his current ability has stalled at 116. It stayed level for 2 seasons, even though he had a step up in terms of the quality of football going from League 1 to the Championship. It hasn't really progressed him in terms of his current ability. However, in terms of progression for stats, anticipation, decisions and jumping reach are the ones that have started to move in the right direction. Looking at his value, he's now 7.8 to £9 million. So that's come down a little bit, and he's a 2-star current ability and a 3.5-star potential ability against Fulham's first team. Let's look at his season in the Championship then. He played for Reading, as I said, 27 times, getting a 6.71 average rating, so a decent amount of first team football in terms of his development. Looking across the season, it says in the league he played 17 as a starter, 10 as a substitute, and he had that 6.71 average rating. He didn't get to play in any cup games for Reading. So when we look at the development, it's ended up with only 5 points between them. The stay-at-home player, once he got into the first team, started to rapidly up his current ability to 111, whereas this version of the player had already got to 116 after 3 loans and kind of stalled out at 116 once he got there. So that's how the 2 players have finished. Let's show you a few slides that wrap up exactly how the players have developed. We'll go across each player or each version of the player and their seasons, and then put them side by side so you can see exactly what happened to both players. Here we go then, let's have a look at what happened across the experiment, starting off with the player trained in club at Fulham. So you can see at the start of the game he was a 65 current ability. After 1 season in the under-21s he went to 85, 2 seasons in the under-21s moved to 91, a bit part player in the first team he went to 96, and then he progressed nicely in season 4 once he played a full first team season, ending on 111. You can also see the progression in terms of his stats in the 2 boxes at the bottom. For the player who went out and experienced all the loans, you can see at the start of the game he was 65. He went to Boreham Wood in the first season and moved to 103 current ability. Went to Charlton in season 2 and moved to 114. He then went to Derby County in season 3 and was 116. And then Reading in the last season, where he's just stalled out at 116 current ability. Again, if you want to look at any of the stats and how they've increased, they're all at the bottom. And finally, a side-by-side comparison of what happened to the player in both of the sliding door scenarios. So on the left, trained at Fulham, he finished at 111 current ability, and he had standout stats of tackling, marking, heading, anticipation, concentration, determination, positioning, leadership, and then all of the physicals were developed quite nicely. On the right hand side, when he went out on loan, he finished at 116 current ability, and his standout stats were also heading, marking, tackling, anticipation, bravery, determination, positioning, leadership, work rate, and then all the physicals also developing nicely. So side by side, there is a little bit of a difference in terms of the player, but in terms of the current ability, the one who went out on loan is the one that developed the better. There we go then, that is the end of the experiment, and you can see that the lone player is the one that come out with the best current ability. Only by 5 points in the end. It was interesting to see how quickly that lone player, when exposed to first team football, started to climb in his current ability, and how it took the home player a little bit longer to start on that upward trajectory, but once they got to the first team, it did start to accelerate pretty quickly, and it meant that at the end of the experiment there was only 5 current ability between the two players. So maybe sometimes it's better to go and send your players out on loan early in their careers and then develop them yourself once you get them into the first team as it goes along. Maybe the home player could have been aided by moving up into the first team a little bit quicker. Maybe there were some things we could have done with the training, but in terms of being fair, I couldn't control the training that was going on away at the loan, so I didn't control it at the club. And I think what happened was exposure to first team football wins out against under 21s football at all times. Right then, if you've enjoyed the video and you're still here, still listening to me, firstly, a big thank you. Secondly, if you could drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another one of these kinds of videos right here on the channel. Also, check out the channel. There is other things. There are Let's Plays, tactics, wonder kids, hints and tips, you name it, we've got it. But for this one, I'm going to wrap it there. Thank you for sticking with the channel. I'll see you soon on another video.